Hello and welcome to another episode of The Startup Show, brought to you by Inc. Authority. I'm your host, Trevor Rowley. You know, new business owners all around the world are always interested in how they can market their goods and services to the general public. And they want to be able to protect their names, their logos, their brands. There's a lot of talk about branding and how important it is to build your brand. Of course, trademarks plays a big part in how one builds and protects their brand. And to walk us through the process of what a trademark is and how it's used to do that very thing, please welcome to the program David Ouelette, a business advisor at Inc. Authority.
Welcome. Thank you, Trevor. Happy to be here.
Great. So tell us, as a business advisor at Inc. Authority, you interact with a lot of new business owners, particularly startup business owners.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, what's that like? What do you do for them?
Yeah, it's awesome. Actually, you get all walks of life that come to us all across the country, sometimes internationally, that are, you know, they're working for another job and they're trying to branch out and do their own thing. And it could be anything from a mom and pop shop to something really large scaled. So I love it. You know, you're helping entrepreneurs all across the country kind of live their dreams and find their own identity for what they want to do.
That's awesome. You know, I think it's great. It's one of the things that sets Inc. Authority apart, maybe from other business formation companies, is this role as a business advisor where a brand new entrepreneur, a business startup owner, can talk to somebody who's seasoned in the process, who's been through it, not only for themselves in starting up a new business, but has walked thousands of other business owners through the process, right, knows the ups and the downs and the things to avoid, and also knows ways that can help them, particularly when it comes to branding.
Right.
You know, as I look at it in the course of my career and the businesses I've started up, you know, it's one thing to have the idea for a business. It's another thing to come up with a creative way maybe to fund the startup of the business. But once those doors are open and I've hung the shingle, I've got to get the word out to people, right? And I've got to be memorable.
Yes.
And I think that's where this process of branding comes into play. And I know there's a lot of things that people can do to brand their company. There's logos and there's symbols and there are phrases and words that are used to make their business more memorable to the organization. Tell me about trademarks, right? I know a trademark is a way to start to protect that. So what exactly is a trademark?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very common one. You know, a lot of folks will think, you know, I have my name, it's mine, no one can take it, and they leave it at that when they register it with the state, with their LLC or corporation or what have you. But in reality, the way to protect this is with a trademark. It's a piece of intellectual property, and it's basically an instrument to where that jurisdiction expands past just my state. So if I, file one for David's Cookies in the state of Nevada as a business, my trademark now expands and really just protects that name to where no one else can use it in the United States. So it's up to the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah.
So if I love that name, if I love that logo I made, that trademark is really what I should be filing in order to retain the rights to what I want.
Right. So as I listen to you, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is, again, and we've heard this throughout all of the episodes that we've put together of the Startup Show, is that having that LLC or the corporation is kind of the foundational piece for getting that business started.
Certainly.
And from then you can kind of bolt on some of these other goods or services to help build that business. And a trademark's a part of that because you file that LLC, for example, it's filed in a particular state. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's California, right? Because that's where you're going to be conducting business. And you've locked in that name when it's approved by the state. Nobody else can use that name for another corporation or an LLC, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, the protection doesn't really go beyond those borders through the state filing only.
Right.
And I've also talked to people who said, well, I don't need to have a trademark because common law practices, if I'm utilizing, you know, whatever this name or logo or symbol or whatever is, and if I have first use rights, then nobody really can come in and use that. And there is truth to that, of course.
Certainly.
But there's also a lot of limits to that.
Right.
Because it's going to be limited really to your locality where you are, that sort of thing. Which is why there are things such as state trademarks, right? Which now you can at least expand that branding protection of that logo or symbol or phrase or whatever it is to the state borders. But what you're referencing here are federal trademarks where you can make that protection expand beyond your state's border, but beyond the locality and go across the United States, right?
Right, exactly.
So why would somebody want to trademark? Can you give me some examples of something that somebody might want to trademark or why they might want to consider getting a trademark? I know it's more than just a business name, so tell me about it.
Yeah, so I'll give you a prime example, and for the privacy of one of my clients, I'll keep it somewhat vague. But she and a couple partners went in on a business. They were in Texas. Loved the idea. They were running a holistic space business, but decided, we are going to create our own logo. We wanted to stand out and be more so, not so much different from the rest of the businesses in the industry, but really what they need to make it is distinguishable. You look at McDonald's, you don't see the sign that says it in the sky. You see the golden arches. I can see that M and know that's McDonald's. So that brand recognition is really what they were seeking after, and a beautifully designed logo that they actually made themselves, created the vector image for it, and really what they were trying to accomplish was, hey, we might be in Texas, but we might fly out to Georgia to go see a client, or in Nevada or New York or whatever that was, and they didn't want to be limited, or risk any unnecessary exposure with it. And so since they had their LLC with the intent to use their, it made it really seamless to file the trademark, and it just made sense for them.
Yeah. It's interesting. They've done a lot of studies about trademarks and the impact on trademarks. Marketing groups, et cetera, have done these surveys, and they'll show individuals without the name of the business, a logo associated with it that's been trademarked, right? And they're like, do you recognize this business? And it's uncanny how many of these businesses are recognized simply by their logo,
in
right?
A spot, like that.
And you don't want anybody else to infringe upon that, because that's yours. That's how you're recognized.
Right.
And so having that trademark is a way to do that. When I think about, an example like this, like you've got a business and that business has a logo and they're interested in getting a trademark, often you think, well, I'm just going to trademark the logo, but really that's like one piece of it. Certainly you can do that, but you can in many cases trademark the name, you can trademark the logo by itself, or you can trademark the name and the logo together.
Right.
There's possibility you could get as many as 3 trademarks for your business that could protect you no matter how you want to display that to the public, as just the name only, the name with the logo, or the logo only. It's pretty incredible.
It is.
So sometimes people come to me and they say, Trevor, I kind of get this thing about the trademarks, but I also know there's something called copyrights out there.
Right.
And what's the difference? So I'll ask you, David, what is the difference between a copyright and a trademark?
Yeah, well, and they kind of fit in the same realm, both pieces of intellectual property. So think of copywriting as just the original design of something, right? So if I'm a wedding photographer, which actually one of my clients that lives here in Reno with us is, and she's taking the photograph, she technically has the copyrights to that and can file as such, right? So she can go file. We both draw a smiley face on this table. I have the copyrights to mine. You have the copyrights to yours. I can't say that's my smiley face because you drew it.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what that copyright is. It's that ownership, essentially.
Yeah.
The trademark will then protect what you own. So from there, the cadence essentially, you want to own what you have, then file the protections for it, so that way, no one else can say it's yours. I can't tell you, Trevor, you can't use that smiley face anymore. Well, if you have the trademark, you say, well, actually, David, I can, and you can't, with the intent to use that you have it sought after. So, and a lot of folks get these terms mixed up, thinking, well, is it a copyright I need, or is it a trademark? And it's very common, but ultimately, if you're needing it protected, it's the trademark you'd want to file.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a great explanation. I've heard other ways to explain the same thing. I think what you've just done does it very, very well. Another way I've heard it done is that a copyright is something that protects something that's been authored.
Right.
So a book,
right.
A song, lyrics, artwork.
Right.
Just as you mentioned with the photography, those are the sorts of things that could be copyright protected. And when they are, of course, they get the little circle with the C in it, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to when you go through the trademark process with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO for short,
Right.
you get the little circle with the R in it, right, that shows that it's been registered as a trademark. So let's say I'm a customer of yours, David, and I'm calling you, and I've got a logo, and I've got this new business, and I'm trying to create this brand recognition for my business. Walk me through the process of what that might look like. If you're saying, hey, Trevor, have you considered a trademark? What does it look like?
Well, again, it's up to the eye of the beholder. I always, at least for my clients, I leave it up to them. How much is your brand worth to you in regard to, that will make sense as to when to file. You can do it right after you get your LLC. You could do it 20 years later. Really, it's up to you. But, if it's important to protect, basically we take the slogan, name, a logo, and as you mentioned before, a logo in a name altogether. I had a client actually send me a shirt a few days ago, and it's pretty neat. Wish I could share it, but to keep that private. But we basically just gather the tangibles. The LLC is going to own it. What are we protecting? How are we protecting it? And then what class of good or service we're filing. And it's a pretty seamless process, quick to start. Within 24 hours, we can have a serial number and file it with the USPTO office. But hopefully my clients are patient, because waiting for that response from the USPTO is almost like waiting at the DMV on steroids. You got to wait just a couple months and
several months, more than several actually.
Almost half a year.
Yeah. So it's great. One of the things that Inc. Authority does is they help them through the trademark process. As I explained, is we do that digital filing right away, and you will get this serial number, the submission number. You'll know that it's in progress, but you do have to wait for the USPTO to go through the approval process, and it can be a lengthy wait. And so one does have to be patient. There's not much you can do to kind of expedite the process.
Not really, yeah.
And then you also mentioned classes of goods or services, right? Because we talked about what the copyright was versus the trademark. The trademark is really the protection for that intellectual property or the source of goods that you're going to be bringing out to the public. And so you have to choose and select, what is the class of goods that you're going to be bringing to the public. And there are a number of different classes that the trademark office has. And you can trademark more than one class, but there are additional filing fees with the USPTO if you want to file multiple classes.
That is true.
So for a lot of brand new startups, it's a single class of goods.
Yep.
That's how they get started, to try and make this a little bit smoother and easier. But if they felt like they had a need to protect that same trademark over multiple classes of goods, they could potentially do that as well. There's just additional fees that are involved.
And usually you do that after you're established, right? You want to get your feet wet. You still want to protect your brand, or maybe it's a product or a service you're providing, and you're doing well. Business is flourishing. And now it's like, okay, well, let me talk to my advisor, and they'll call me up and say, okay, David, what's our next move here? What would you recommend? And at that point, the business will dictate what that next appropriate step is. Do we expand on that class of good or service? Are there additional marks we need to file? And that'll kind of dictate what that's supposed to look like.
Right. So let's say I decide to have you take care of my trademark filing, right? And so we're going through this process, and I'm going to have this single class of goods and services. I'm submitting this information to you so that you can go through the process of getting it registered with the USPTO. What kind of happens next?
Yeah, good question. So our team of specialists, typically whether it's same day or next day, they're on top of it. Last thing we want to do is to fail to file and have somebody else slide, and file their trademark that could be very similar or undistinguishable between the two. So we're on top of it.
How do you search for that, first of all? What's to make sure
well,
that somebody else doesn't have one already in existence?
Well, I can speak at least with Inc. Authority. So we use a technology that's very similar, if not identical, to what was provided by the USPTO. One of our licensed team members or attorneys was one of the ones that used this technology for the comprehensive search. And so it's not just a matter of I do a quick Google search, all right, nobody's using the name David's Cookies, right? And so we do a very comprehensive search. And so that'll come back and kind of tell us, is it distinguishable? Are there any conflicts? What can we do to provide that attorney? And this is all within a day or two.
Yeah, this is a really critical part of it, right? Because
Certainly.
This U.S. comprehensive search, it'll search not only the existing federal trademarks that are of record, but it'll also go back and it'll search state trademarks of record to make sure there's not already an existing conflict, because you don't want to go through the process and then have it rejected because something else is already there. So before you submit, you go through this comprehensive search to make sure that it looks like there's a very good chance, excellent chance that that's going to go through, that there isn't anything else there. So we've done that. We've made the submission, now we wait.
Basically it's, unless laws change, which the USPTO does on a whim from time to time, but usually it's about 6 months until an examining attorney with the USPTO will actually pick up the application and put a couple eyeballs on it, review it. And then from there, it could be they're asking for additional info. Maybe they want to see the specimen. Maybe there's an office action taking place or a refusal.
But you take care of all of that?
Certainly, yeah. Our team actually will respond, because there's not very many business owners that know Latin, and this is typically how these attorneys respond with in these letters, and they send it back and ask for additional info. So we handle all that. And if there's any information we need from the client, well, we're on top of it. Hey, Trevor, do you have a copy of a business card? Or, hey, do you have your logo printed on a shirt? Or, what is, do you have your website set up?
The proof of use, right? And the date of first use.
Right.
So let's say I get my trademark approved. Now, what do I do to make sure that nobody else does infringe upon it? How do I protect that trademark once I have it filed?
Good question. Oftentimes, if you're on your own, it's very tedious. Because who knows? Somebody in Maine could be using it for all you know. Our team does all the monitoring for the life of that mark. So whether you have your mark for 5 years or 50 years, our team is going to continuously check it, provide any direct hit monitoring to our clients. And they're on top of it too. So they'll notify our clients, and then at that point it's just a matter of going through a cease and desist procedure, which we can assist with too. And if it has to go to litigation, well, that's the unfortunate reality sometimes.
Sometimes it is. I think that there's most people out there, I don't think are intentionally trying to infringe upon somebody else's trademark. They just haven't gone through the process of actually looking to see if somebody else is using it. And so they start a business somewhere and they have a name. It may be exactly the same as one that's being used across the country. They just aren't unaware of it. Or it might be what they say is deceptively similar, right? Either way, though, it's up to the owner of the trademark to make sure that that is protected. So by having this lifetime monitoring, somebody out there with eyeballs on things, watching for these things, and then letting you know if somebody's infringing upon your trademark, gives you the opportunity to go ahead and then take action, cease and desist and so forth, so you can protect that. Because if you fail to do that, then it starts to become part of the public domain and you can lose the rights to the trademark. Think back of, like so many things that Kleenex, for example, that became a common term, but it was somebody's, it was, at one time, Xerox, right? I mean, these things that you just say all the time, right? And so you have to protect it yourself.
Absolutely.
So, you've worked with thousands of business owners, so many trademarks that have gone through for different logos and slogans and symbols and so on and so forth. Do you have any stories that you can tell us about somebody who did this and maybe how it worked out for them?
Yeah, certainly. So I've got a gentleman out in Virginia. He runs a very successful clothing business. And so he'd been a construction worker by trade, loved doing what he did, but he wanted to start his own business and kind of had a buddy in mind that, this is kind of what we want to get into and start our own process of being business owners. And so, the advice I gave them was awesome. Well, depending on your level of seriousness, obviously the LLC was the first step. He shared with me both logos. Conversation was basically, which one are you going to use the most? And which one's more important? Well, we identified which of the two was the most important, filed the trademark, but this gentleman was on top of it, Trevor, because when the USPTO responds and we needed something from him, he was on it like that. There was no couple days delay or a week delay or he got back to us in a month. He was serious about this. So within, granted, this is almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, but it took him about 8 months to get it fully filed. And so now he's got his website up, it's launched. I can't say I was his first customer in Northern Nevada, but he's doing well and loves it. And his site looks amazing and he can have it running with the peace of mind of knowing it's protected.
Yeah, I just love to hear stories like that because I am all about entrepreneurs starting businesses. It's the lifeblood of our economy. It's what brings jobs into cities large and small. And I just love that I get to see and be part of individuals' successes as they start the business. I love to hear stories like that. And thank you for all the work that you do with entrepreneurs around the country, helping them get these things done. I think branding is absolutely one of the most important things somebody can do after they've incorporated their business, after they've hung their shingle, they've got those customers coming in. You've got to protect that, right? Got to make sure that nobody else can infringe upon that, whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally. And trademark is certainly something that should be high on the list of considerations for a brand new business owner. So thank you for joining us today.
You bet.
And I want to thank all of you, of course, for joining us again today. This has been an incredible conversation about trademarks. We've learned a lot. If you'd like to learn more, of course, give us a call, reach out to us at Inc. Authority. We'd be happy to help you. And of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you don't miss any of our content. And while you're there, hit the notification bell as well. Make sure you don't miss any of the great content we're bringing you. Each week, we're going to bring you a new program to teach you more about what you can do to launch, grow, and scale your business. So until next time, this is Trevor Rowley for The Startup Show, brought to you by Inc. Authority. We'll see you next time.